Princess Lyra of the planet Zelthara stood at the edge of the grand palace balcony. Her long silver hair flowed in the wind, and her violet eyes, sharp and intelligent, scanned the sprawling city below. Zelthara's capital glimmered under the twin suns, a dazzling mixture of crystal towers, floating walkways and gardens that seemed to stretch forever. Yet none of this beauty could ease the anger boiling inside her. Lyra had always been clever and daring. She questioned rules, challenged traditions, and refused to bow to every command from the ruling council. It had made her famous among her people, but it had also made powerful enemies. Today she faced a punishment unlike any other, a punishment she considered worse than exile or public shame. A soft chime echoed through the palace, signaling the arrival of her guest. Lyra's sharp ears twitched, but she did not move. Her father, King Virel, approached quietly. He was a tall, elegant figure, his robes glittering with ceremonial gems. He looked at Lyra with both pride and sorrow. "Lyra," he said, his voice calm but heavy, "the council has decided. Your actions cannot go unpunished. You will marry a human." Lyra's eyes widened, and for a brief moment she could not speak. Humans. Weak, primitive, strange beings from a distant star system. Zelthara regarded them as inferior in almost every way. To be forced into a marriage with one was considered humiliating for anyone of royal blood. "A human?" she finally said, her voice sharp with disbelief. "Father, you cannot be serious." This is absurd." King Virel's gaze was steady. "It is not absurd. It is your punishment. You must learn humility, Lyra. The council believes this will teach you to respect the rules of our society." Lyra's lips pressed into a thin line. She wanted to argue, to refuse, but she knew it was pointless. The council's word was final. She turned abruptly and swept into the grand hall, her robes trailing behind her like silver waves. When she entered, she found the human waiting. He was not what she expected. He stood straight, shoulders relaxed, and eyes calm but curious. He did not bow excessively, nor did he show fear. He simply looked at her, a slight smile on his lips. Lyra's first instinct was to dismiss him. He looked ordinary, almost fragile compared to the Zeltharan guards around him, yet there was something in the way he carried himself, a quiet confidence that irritated her. "This is your human," King Virel said, gesturing. "His name is Joran. He has agreed to this arrangement." Lyra's hands clenched. "Agreed?" she hissed. "You mean he doesn't even know what he is getting into?" "This is a disgrace." Joran stepped forward calmly. "Princess Lyra, I understand this is difficult for you. I do not wish to cause offense. I am here to meet your expectations, whatever they may be." Lyra blinked. His words were polite, careful, yet firm. Most humans, she had heard, would panic or beg. This one stood as if he belonged in her world. Her irritation grew. "You will find this palace difficult," she said coldly. "The customs, the rules, the council, everything will test you. You will fail, human. I promise you will fail." Joran tilted his head slightly. "Then I will learn. I am not afraid of challenges." Lyra was stunned. Few could speak so calmly to a princess, let alone one from a proud and strict society. She turned sharply, signaling that the conversation was over. Over the next few days, Lyra made it her mission to test Joran. She assigned him endless tasks, some ridiculous, some nearly impossible. She taught him the most complicated etiquette rules of Zelthara, and watched closely as he attempted to follow them. The council members came to observe, eager to see him fail. But Joran did not fail. Not completely. Sometimes he stumbled, of course, bowing too quickly or addressing the wrong council member, but he always recovered using logic, observation, and his own simple yet clever methods. Slowly, Lyra realized that he was not just surviving, he was adapting. One morning, she found him in the palace gardens, carefully studying the patterns of floating flowers. "Why are you doing that?" she asked, her voice suspicious. "I notice the flowers move in a predictable rhythm," he said. "If I follow the pattern, I can avoid stepping on them. It seems efficient." Lyra stared at him. Most aliens would have ignored such details. Humans, she had thought, were clumsy and careless. Yet here was one who observed, analyzed, and acted thoughtfully. "Do you always notice everything?" she asked, her curiosity mixed with irritation. "I try," he said simply. "I want to do my best, princess." Lyra turned and walked away, feeling something strange stir in her chest. It was not respect, at least not yet. but it was curiosity, something she had not expected. The days passed, and with each one, Joran continued to surprise her. During a council meeting, when an urgent problem arose with palace logistics, he suggested a solution that no Zeltharan official had considered. It worked perfectly. The council members were astonished. Lyra, however, clenched her hands behind her back. She could not admit it publicly, but she felt a flicker of admiration. At night, when the palace was quiet, Lyra found herself observing him in small, private ways. How he handled himself at dinner, how he spoke to the servants with respect, how he quietly practiced the dances she assigned him. She began to wonder if the council had truly understood the punishment they were giving her. One evening, as the twin suns set, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold, Joran approached her balcony quietly. "Princess," he said softly, "I hope I am not disturbing you." Lyra turned sharply. "What do you want, human?" she demanded. "I wanted to understand you better," he said honestly. "I know you think this marriage is a punishment. I want to show you that I mean no harm." Lyra's eyes narrowed. "You think you can impress me with words?" "I do not know if I can," he said calmly. "But I will try." She stared at him, unsure why his presence did not irritate her as much as it should. There was something different about him. He did not demand respect, nor did he shrink away from her authority. He simply existed, quietly strong and patiently attentive. Lyra felt an unfamiliar sensation, a mix of frustration and intrigue. This human was not what she expected. Perhaps, she thought bitterly, the council had underestimated him. Perhaps she had underestimated him herself. As the night deepened, Lyra turned back to the city lights below. She clenched her fists, but her mind was not on rebellion or anger. It was on the human who had arrived as her punishment. And for the first time, she felt a tiny spark of doubt about what punishment truly meant. Maybe, just maybe, it would not be a punishment at all. The next morning, the palace corridors were filled with the soft hum of activity. Princess Lyra moved through the halls with purpose, her silver robes brushing the polished floors. Today she had decided she would truly test Joran, the human who had dared to survive her first days of challenges. "Come here," she said sharply when she spotted him in the training hall, practicing the complex movements she had assigned. "We have much to do." Joran approached calmly, his steps measured and careful. "I am ready, Princess," he said. His voice carried neither fear nor arrogance, only quiet determination. Lyra's violet eyes narrowed. "You have learned some customs quickly," she said, "but can you handle the real test? You will attend the Grand Council session today. You must address the council, present a report on your understanding of our laws, and respond to their questions." Joran inclined his head. "I understand. I will do my best," Lyra snorted. "Your best will fail." The council chamber was vast, with high ceilings that shimmered with crystalline light. Alien delegates from across Zelthara were seated in tiers, observing the human with skeptical eyes. Murmurs ran through the room as Joran entered, his posture upright and confident. Lyra watched from her seat. She expected disaster, yet something deep inside made her uneasy. He did not look weak or frightened. He looked focused. The head counselor, an elderly alien with shimmering gold skin, addressed him first. "Human, tell us why you should be considered worthy to marry Princess Lyra. Explain why you understand our customs and laws." Joran cleared his throat politely. "Honored counselors, I come from a distant world. My people have different ways, but I am here to learn and to respect your laws. I do not claim to know everything, but I promise to observe, adapt, and act with care." A few counselors whispered to each other, clearly surprised by his composure. Lyra's hands clenched under the table. She could not admit it, but he was impressive. The council asked difficult questions. They challenged him on political matters, ethical dilemmas, and cultural rituals. Each time Joran paused thoughtfully, considered his response, and answered clearly, never insulting, never hesitating. Lyra leaned back. This was supposed to be humiliating. She had expected the human to falter, to stumble, to embarrass himself before everyone. Yet with each answer, he seemed to gain more respect. Even some counselors nodded quietly. When the session ended, Lyra approached him privately in the corridor. "You did not fail," she said, her voice tight. "Why? Why are you not as foolish as I expected?" Joran looked at her calmly. Because I observe, I listen. I try to understand before acting. That is all. Lyra stared at him. There was a simplicity to his words, but also a quiet power. You make it look easy, she said bitterly. It is not easy. You are lucky, human. I do not rely on luck, he said softly. I rely on learning and trying. Perhaps that is what makes the difference. Lyra shook her head and turned away, though she could not ignore the small flicker of admiration she felt. The palace of Zelthera stood proud beneath the glow of the twin suns, but inside its shining walls unrest had begun to stir. Whispers spread through the corridors, rumors of rebels rising in the outer districts, discontent among the people, and plots forming against the royal council. Princess Lyra sat in the council chamber, her violet eyes sharp as she listened to the reports. The rebels are bold, one counselor said. They sabotage trade routes and stir anger among the workers. If this continues, the palace itself may be threatened. Lyra's jaw tightened. She wanted to speak, to give orders, but she held her tongue. This was the council's domain, and she was already under punishment. Across the chamber, she noticed Joran sitting quietly, his human features calm as always. He listened closely, his eyes moving from one counselor to the next as if weighing every word. Later, as they walked through the palace gardens, Lyra finally spoke to him. Do not think this is your concern, human. Our politics are far beyond you. Joran glanced at her with calm eyes. Everything is connected, princess. If rebels threaten the palace, they threaten you as well. And if they threaten you, they threaten me. Lyra frowned, caught off guard. You would stand against rebels for me? Even though you are here as punishment? Joran's voice was steady. Punishment or not, I gave my word. I will stand beside you. Something in his tone struck her deeply, though she quickly hit it with a sharp reply. Do not speak so boldly. You will not last in true danger, but the days ahead would test them both more than she imagined. That night, alarms echoed through the palace. Servants and guards rushed through the halls, their voices tense. Lyra hurried to the balcony and saw smoke rising from the edge of the city. A rebel faction had attacked a supply depot. Explosions lit up the night sky and panic spread through the streets. The council gathered quickly, debating what to do. Send the guard units, one demanded. No, we must protect the palace first, argued another. Lyra stood silent, her heart burning with frustration. They argued while her people suffered. Then, to her surprise, Joran spoke. If I may, he said respectfully, the rebels are trying to distract you. They want you to divide your forces. If you abandon the depot, they gain supplies. If you abandon the palace, they gain victory. But if you act with speed and precision, you can defend both. The counselors stared at him in disbelief. And what do you know of strategy, human? One sneered. Joran met their eyes calmly. On my world, I have studied conflicts. The key is timing. Send a small fast force to secure the depot while keeping the palace heavily guarded. Do not allow the rebels to predict your moves. For a moment, the chamber was silent. Then Lyra spoke. He is right. The council looked at her with shock, but Lyra's voice was firm. The human sees clearly what you cannot. We must act quickly. I will lead the mission to secure the depot. The council protested, but Lyra's authority as princess gave her the right to decide. And so, within the hour, Lyra found herself aboard a sleek transport, leading a small group of guards toward the burning district. To her surprise, Joran stood among them, armored lightly but carrying himself with steady resolve. Why are you here? She demanded. You said it yourself, he replied simply. If they threaten you, they threaten me. Lyra stared at him, then turned away. She did not want to admit it, but she was relieved he was there. The battle at the depot was chaos. Rebels armed with stolen weapons clashed with the royal guards. Energy blasts lit the night and the air smelled of smoke and fire. Lyra fought fiercely with her staff, striking down attackers with precision. She caught glimpses of Joran in the fight. He was not the strongest nor the fastest, but he was clever. He used cover wisely, distracted enemies with quick thinking, and supported the guards at critical moments. At one point, a rebel broke through the line and charged directly at Lyra. She raised her staff, but before she could strike, Joran appeared at her side, pulling her out of harm's way and countering with a swift move that sent the rebel sprawling. Careful, princess, he said, breathing hard but steady. Lyra blinked, stunned. No one had ever moved to protect her like that. Not because of duty, not because of command, but because they simply chose to. She felt her heart beat faster, though she quickly covered it with anger. Do not presume I needed saving, human. Of course. Joran said, his calm smile unshaken. Together they fought until the rebels retreated into the shadows of the city. The depot was saved and the guards cheered their victory. But Lyra's thoughts were not on the rebels. They were on the human who had stood beside her without hesitation. Back at the palace, the council questioned how the mission had succeeded. When they heard that Joran's strategy had played a role, their expressions grew sour. Some muttered about luck, others about coincidence, but Lyra spoke firmly. The human was right, she declared before the council. He saw what you did not. Without his words, we might have lost much more. The council fell silent. They did not like to hear it, but they could not deny the truth. That night, Lyra found herself restless. She wandered the palace halls until she reached the quiet terrace overlooking the starlit sky. To her surprise, Joran was already there, standing silently with his hands behind his back. "You should not be here alone," she said softly. "I could say the same to you," Joran replied, his voice calm. Lyra stepped closer, studying him. "Why did you help me? You had no reason to fight so fiercely. You could have stayed behind." Joran looked at her seriously. "Because I believe in standing with those who need it. You may not trust me yet, but I will not abandon you. Not in battle, not in peace." Lyra's chest tightened. She wanted to speak sharply, to dismiss his words, but she could not. She saw honesty in his eyes, a kind of loyalty that was rare even among her own people. "You are strange, human," she whispered. "Strange. And impossible." "Perhaps," Joran said with a faint smile. "But sometimes the impossible is exactly what is needed." For the first time, Lyra felt her anger soften. She looked out at the stars, her thoughts tangled. This marriage had begun as a punishment, a cruel decision forced upon her. Yet now, in the quiet night, she wondered if it might lead to something far different, something she had never expected. The days after the rebel attack brought an unusual calm to the palace. The city still whispered about the battle, but the depot was safe and the guards had returned as heroes. For Princess Lyra, however, the memory of that night lingered for another reason. She kept seeing Joran standing beside her, his calm eyes steady even when chaos raged around them. She tried to push the thought away. This was her punishment, nothing more. And yet when she walked the palace halls, she found her gaze searching for him. One morning, Lyra wandered into the gardens and saw Joran crouched near the floating flowers, sketching their patterns into a small notebook he had brought from his world. He looked up when she approached. "Princess," he greeted warmly, standing at once. Lyra tilted her head, curious. "Why do you always study things so closely?" "Flowers, guards, council meetings. You watch everything." Joran smiled faintly. "On my world, humans learn by watching. Observation is often the first step to understanding. I may not be stronger than your people, but I can learn." His answer was simple, yet it touched her. Most of her own kind rushed into decisions, too proud to admit they needed to study or adapt. This human, however, seemed to thrive on patience. "You are strange," Lyra said, but there was no sharpness in her tone this time. "Perhaps," Joran admitted, "but I think strange can be useful." Lyra almost laughed, though she quickly turned her face away. That evening, the palace prepared for the Festival of Twin Suns, a celebration held once every year when the two suns aligned perfectly in the sky. Lanterns floated high above the towers, glowing with soft light. Musicians filled the air with melodies, and dancers spun gracefully in the grand courtyard. Lyra, dressed in shimmering robes, stood at the center of it all. The counselors watched her carefully, whispering among themselves. They had not forgotten that she had defended Joran during the last meeting, and they disapproved. Tonight, Lyra told herself, I must act as a princess, not as someone distracted by a human. But her resolve wavered when she saw Joran arrive at the edge of the courtyard. He wore formal Zeltharan attire, slightly awkward on his frame, but he carried it with dignity. He bowed to her respectfully, not too deep, not too shallow. Just right. Lyra's lips pressed together. She remembered how he had practiced the ceremonial dances in private, failing again and again. Now he stood ready to try before the whole court. Surely, she thought, this would be the moment he stumbled. When the music began, Lyra reluctantly took his hand. The dance was intricate, requiring partners to move in perfect rhythm. At first, Joran's steps were stiff, but then Lyra felt him adapt, his movements smoothing as he matched her pace. His grip was steady, firm, but respectful. To her shock, they moved together with surprising harmony. The counselors whispered in disbelief as the human spun and stepped with her, not flawlessly but gracefully enough to hold the audience's gaze. When the music ended, the crowd erupted in polite applause. Lyra pulled her hand away quickly, her heart racing. She did not understand why her face felt warm. "You did well," she muttered under her breath. "Thank you, Princess," Joran replied quietly. "I only followed your lead." For the rest of the night, Lyra found her thoughts strangely unsettled. The whispers in the palace grew louder with every passing day. Servants carried rumors from one corridor to another, and guards exchanged knowing looks during their shifts. Everyone had seen how Princess Lyra no longer treated Joran with the cold distance she once had. She now allowed him to walk beside her, not behind. She sometimes even spoke to him in public with softened tones. To the people it looked less like punishment and more like something else. The council noticed too, and they were not pleased. One evening, Lyra was summoned to the council chamber. The tall room was filled with flickering crystal lights, and the elders sat in their curved seats, their sharp eyes fixed on her as she entered. Joran followed quietly, as duty required. "Princess Lyra," one counselor began, his voice stern, "it has come to our attention that you are showing favor to this human. You forget why this union was arranged. It was meant as a lesson, not as indulgence." Lyra kept her chin high. "I have not forgotten. But I will not mistreat someone who has shown loyalty to me and to our people." The counselor's eyes narrowed. "A human cannot be loyal to us. He is an outsider, a tool for your correction, nothing more." At that moment, Joran bowed slightly. His voice was calm, respectful. "I am no threat to Zelthara. My only aim is to stand with the princess and serve in whatever way I can." Another elder leaned forward. "And yet you behave as though you are her equal. Dancing in our festivals, walking in our gardens, speaking as if your words matter here." Joran met their stares without fear. "I never claimed equality. I only claimed responsibility." The chamber filled with murmurs. The elders did not like his boldness, yet they could not deny the strength in his voice. When the meeting ended, Lyra left with anger boiling in her chest. As soon as they reached the corridor, she turned to Joran. "You should not have spoken so directly," she said. "The council takes such words as challenge." Joran's expression remained calm. "If I said nothing, they would believe me weak. If I spoke too strongly, they would see me as a threat. I chose the middle ground. Sometimes silence is as dangerous as defiance." Lyra paused. She wanted to argue, but his words made sense. Slowly, she nodded. "You take risks for someone who owes you nothing," she murmured. "Perhaps," Joran replied. "But perhaps I do owe you something. When the rebels came, you fought beside me. That bond cannot be ignored." Lyra looked away quickly, hiding the sudden warmth rising in her chest. The tension did not fade. Within days, the council called for a public trial, not of law but of worth. They announced that if the human wished to remain at the princess's side, he must prove his value before the people of Zelthara. The trial was to be held in the Grand Arena, a place where warriors once tested their skills. Now it would be Joran who faced judgment, not with swords but through trials of mind and heart. The day of the event arrived, and the arena filled with citizens. Lyra sat in the high seat, her face calm but her hands tight against the armrest. She hated the spectacle, but she knew speaking against it would only bring more suspicion. Joran stepped into the center of the arena. He wore no armor, only plain garments, his posture steady and unshaken. The crowd watched with curiosity, some expecting him to fail quickly. The first trial began, a test of knowledge. He was asked questions about Zeltharan history, traditions, and laws. At first, some laughed, thinking he would know nothing. But Joran had studied long nights in the library. His answers came slow but careful, each one surprising the audience. The second trial followed, a test of endurance. He was asked to carry heavy crystal stones across the arena, symbols of burdens a leader must bear. Many thought a human would falter, but though his steps were slow, he never dropped a single stone. Sweat covered his brow, yet his eyes stayed sharp. Finally came the third trial, a test of judgment. He was given 2 petitions from false actors pretending to be citizens. One begged for wealth, the other begged for protection. Joran listened carefully and then chose protection over wealth, explaining that a kingdom that cannot protect its people will one day lose both treasure and power. The arena fell into silence. Then slowly the crowd began to cheer. Lyra's heart swelled with a pride she dared not show openly. She leaned forward, her voice carrying across the arena. "You have passed." The council was displeased, but they could not deny the will of the people. Joran had shown not strength of arms, but strength of character, and Zeltharans valued that deeply. After the trial ended and the arena emptied, Lyra met Joran in the quiet hallway behind the stands. "You surprised them," she said softly. "Did I surprise you?" he asked. Lyra hesitated. "Yes, more than I expected." For a moment they stood close, the air thick with unspoken words. Lyra wanted to say more, to admit the strange feelings she now carried. But her pride held her tongue still. Instead she whispered, "Be careful. The council will not stop here. They will find another way to test you or to remove you." Joran nodded. "Then I will stand ready." That night Lyra could not sleep. She walked alone to the balcony of her chambers, staring at the stars. Below, the city lights twinkled like distant fireflies. She thought of her younger self, the proud princess who had mocked the idea of marrying a human. Now she was no longer certain. Punishment had turned into partnership. Distance had turned into respect. And deep within her something warmer stirred, something she was not yet ready to name. But she knew one truth. Joran was no longer just a tool of the council's punishment. He had become something more, something her heart could not deny. And though the council would fight it, though the galaxy might laugh, Princess Lyra felt the secret delight of knowing she was no longer alone. The real test had only begun. The council did not sleep easily after Joran's victory in the arena. Though the people now looked at him with admiration, the elders saw only danger. To them, a human who could win respect on Zelthara was a threat to tradition and power. They gathered in secret chambers, whispering plans to undo what had already begun. Princess Lyra knew something was coming. She had watched the hard looks on the elders' faces and the way they left the arena in silence. Joran had passed every test, but the council's pride would not allow them to accept him. Days passed quietly, but tension filled the palace halls. Then one morning the summons came again. Lyra and Joran were ordered to appear before the council in full assembly, with nobles and citizens in attendance. It was to be a public trial of loyalty. The council chamber was grander than before. Banners of deep violet hung from the walls, and rows of nobles filled the seats around the room. At the center, the High Elder rose, his voice sharp. "Princess Lyra, you have been given a punishment meant to teach humility, yet you treat this human as more than a burden. You have allowed him honor, respect, and influence. This is unacceptable." Lyra's heart beat quickly, but her voice remained calm. "Joran has done nothing but prove himself. He has shown loyalty to me, to our people, and to Zelthara itself." The elder raised a hand, silencing her. His gaze turned to Joran. "And you, human, if you care so much for the princess, you will leave. You will release her from this punishment and return to your world. That is the only path forward." The hall grew still. Everyone waited for Joran's answer. He stood tall, his voice steady. "If the princess commands me to leave, I will. But if she wishes me to stay, I will remain by her side. I am bound not by your council's punishment, but by my own choice." The words echoed through the chamber. Many nobles shifted uneasily. The people in the balconies murmured. It was bold yet respectful, an answer that placed all power in Lyra's hands. The High Elder turned to Lyra, his eyes piercing. "Then speak, princess. Do you accept this human not as punishment but as partner? Or do you cast him aside as was intended from the beginning?" Silence stretched across the chamber. Lyra felt every eye upon her. She thought of the girl she had been before, proud, defiant, unwilling to bend. She thought of the nights Joran had studied her people's history, the way he had carried stones across the arena, the way he had spoken with wisdom that even her own council sometimes lacked. She thought of the secret warmth in her chest when he smiled. Finally, she rose. "I was told this marriage was punishment," she said, her voice ringing clear. "But in truth, it has been a gift. This human has shown me what strength truly is. Not strength of bloodline, not strength of pride, but strength of heart. I will not cast him aside. I choose him." Gasps filled the chamber. Some nobles looked furious, others stunned. The people in the balconies began to cheer, their voices rising until they drowned out the protests of the council. The High Elder slammed his staff against the floor, his face pale with anger. "You defy us, princess." Lyra's eyes blazed. No, I lead as I must. My people's trust lies not in fear, but in truth. And the truth is this: the human is no punishment. He is my partner. The hall shook with noise. Some counselors shouted, but the crowd's support for Lyra and Joran grew too strong to ignore. In that moment, the council understood they could not win by force. To move against the princess now would risk rebellion. The High Elder finally sank back into his seat, his jaw tight. So be it. But remember, princess, every choice has a price. Lyra bowed her head slightly, calm but unyielding. I accept whatever price comes. That evening, after the storm of politics faded, Lyra and Joran walked together through the quiet palace gardens. The stars shone above, bright,